Well, let's take a step back. And those sole source contracts accounted for about 1% of contracts in the early 2000s. And yet, in 2015, it's 18%. It was 18%, went through the roof, and in the last couple of years, it's now a quarter of, or rather a third of contracts. Is this because there's less competition, that there has to be willing buyer, willing seller contracts? There was the pandemic, of course, in 2023, but is it something that you monitor, Mr. Huppé? Response. Accountability is the purview of the contracting authority. Of course, these things are monitored based on my experience when I was at a number of departments. When we engaged in proactive disclosure for those contracts, the Deputy Minister did ask those kinds of questions as a rule of thumb, and we tried to define whether or not there was a problem in terms of the use of non-competitive contracts. But that's one of the challenges in terms of oversight that the department engages in. But do you think that it was done? This kind of thing went through the roof over recent years. Is this something that still occurs, this kind of oversight, or is there less and less oversight? Response. I don't have any data in respect of that. Obviously, during the pandemic, those tools, i.e. sole source contracts, were used in a meaningful and substantive manner, but I can't really say. But generally speaking, what we do look for is a competitive process. Question, shouldn't you have that data? There's never been a worse year in terms of non-competitive contracts than 2023, and it's a post-pandemic year. Shouldn't this kind of analysis be done systematically? Well, when you referred to justifications for using sole source contracting, well, isn't it your responsibility? Doesn't the buck stop with you?
The floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Sean, I'm going to ask you some questions, please. I understand that the committee heard testimony yesterday from Danny Richards, who is, of course, the president of the Association of Canadian Financial Officers. In his testimony, he said that when outside consultants and firms are hired, their employees are still left to do most of the work, as those consultants come to the public service employees for their work to be verified and their final reports to be done. This was something that the union representing the CBSA officers presented on Arrive Can, saying that they frequently were required to act as technical support. And I guess, I hear that, and I'd like you to clarify for the committee, is it the position of the government of Canada that we should be overpaying for consultants and contracts and then simultaneously underpaying the unionized workers who then also administer and verify the final products and the reports? And I guess perhaps you could even comment a little bit on whether or not you think it's fair that the expert members of our public service unions are frequently told that there's no more money to pay their wages, and then they are left with the residual work of companies who have made these millions and millions of dollars in contracts.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'll revert back to referring to the Directive on Digital Talent that I think we put in place in April 2023. And I will note that we put that in place with the input and ongoing engagement of the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada, PIPSI, which is, of course, the union that represents one of the largest union, if I'm not mistaken, in Canada, with over 70,000 members. That being said, to answer your question specifically, I think what we're endeavoring to do, we know that we have a dependency. We're trying to get off that dependency. It's difficult because, as I mentioned earlier, there's a significant talent deficit in technology, and that's not just with the federal public service. It's happening everywhere. So we're looking for ways and putting in place tools to facilitate not just recruitment and retention, but development and tools to be able to deconflict and make sure that we don't become dependent, as it seems was the case here, on outside contracting. Outside contracting, I want to be clear, is still going to be needed, but it should be clear as to when it is justified, and the directive now puts in place guidance so that as departments and agencies go out and seek that contract help, they're actually checking in with that justification, and there are other eyes on it to confirm that. And just
And
recently,
I know
we've-
I'm
Okay,
out
sorry.
of time, and I hate to interrupt you, but I do want to just say that this clearly, the talent deficiency clearly would stem from the fact that there have been massive cuts to the public sector by both the Liberal and Conservative governments, and fixing it after the fact is actually far more expensive than not having broken this problem.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Do you have a brief reply, Mr. Lachon? That was more of a statement, but very good then. Thank you very much. Turn now to Mr. Genuis. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I am very struck by the comments of my Liberal colleague regarding lack of trust in public institutions, as if public institutions can be trust in public institutions can be disconnected from an evaluation of their conduct. I think public institutions have to earn trust. Now, the Arrive scandal is an earth-shattering scandal. Massive.
Just 1 second,
Point
Mr.
of order,
Genuis.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Khalid, your point of order is?
When Conservative colleagues call it an Arrive scam instead of an Arrive cam app,
Miss
then
Khalid,
it's impacting the public trust. That is the crux of what I was trying to get
Ms.
at.
Khalid, that is not a point of order. That is a term we're hearing both in this committee room, but also throughout Parliament Hill. Mr. Genuis, you have the floor. 4 minutes and 40 seconds, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, trigger warning, my comments will use the word Arrive scam. Arrive scam is impacting public trust because it's an earth-shattering scandal. Massive cost overruns, rigged processes, double-dipping, disappearing records, over 10,000 Canadians incorrectly sent into quarantine, deleted emails, senior public servants accusing each other of perjury, multiple points of conduct that are likely criminal. Yes, this is impacting public trust. The public will only trust institutions when and to the extent that those institutions actually earn their trust. So it's pretty rich for Liberals like Ms. Khalid to talk about the need for public trust in institutions when they have presided over a massive decline in the effectiveness and the trustworthiness of public institutions and done nothing about it.
Mr. Genuis, just now, Ms. Khalid, you are. No, you're not the next speaker, but go ahead. You have a point of order. It's a point of order, not a rebuttal.
I'd appreciate if Mr. Genuis did not try to malign me. I've already been dealing with a lot of hate mail and a lot of threats in my office based on what the Conservatives have done. I would appreciate if you didn't put another target on my back.
Thank you, Ms. Khalid. Mr. Genuis, you have 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I would encourage Canadians who contact the offices of government members to be respectful, polite, and gracious, and also to criticize in a respectful and principled way the profound failures of this government. And I don't think there is anything wrong with criticizing the actions or conduct of members that merit that criticism in this Arrive scam scandal. A quick question for Mr. Houpe. A lot clearly went wrong with the Arrive scan. You said we don't need new rules. Procurement is complex enough. I think it's too complex, actually, and the problem we have is that this government builds highly complex systems that end up masking corruption or direct accountability. But it seems like you set up a false choice, which is either the system stays as it is, or we add additional rules that make it more complex. Isn't the alternative to fix the system so that it's simpler and has clear lines of accountability so that we can actually identify and hold accountable individuals who engage in corrupt action?
So we're always looking to improve on the system. I think that would be a mistake not to do that. In this particular case, my comments were to the effect that, as the Auditor General mentioned, the rules were not followed here. So that's different than, so building, I've got 30 years experience, building a bunch of red tape on top of processes because there's something bad that happened is, in my mind, not the solution here. The problem is that we need to make sure that the compliance of the rules gets respected.
Right.
So that's what the actions will be.
I agree with you that making the system more complex isn't the solution. We need the system to be clear, to work, to hold people accountable for what they've done wrong. But that does mean pretty substantial changes, including changes in leadership. Now, I want to put a fine point on this. Your department, Treasury Board, actually sends the checks for ArriveCan, right?
Send the checks?
Signs the checks, pays the expenses.
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. No,
Okay. Okay.
The department would approve the actual payment under Section 34, so there's someone that validates.
Okay.
And then the check printing actually happens by the Receiver General,
I'm getting process aspects mixed up.
So tomorrow,
But you're approving. So do you, to put a fine point on it, do you know how much was spent? I mean, are you able to answer the questions?
Listen, the Auditor General went through the files.
Right.
She did an audit, and she found, that she wasn't able to trace all the financial records. So, no, I don't, obviously, or else I would have given it to her.
Hence the problem. Chair, I want to move a motion now, and I'll explain after I've moved it, that the committee report to the House that it calls on the government to prohibit any government employee from simultaneously working as an external contractor. That is a matter at hand motion. I've sent an embargoed copy to the clerk who can distribute it.
Thank you. Just 1 second, please.
What's an embargoed copy?
Members have received that motion, and I certainly welcome all members to send motions to the clerk before they are tabled, just to move things along. You're not, of course, required to do so, but it does prevent. And again, you do so, the clerk will process it. And in this case, as in others embargoed, I won't know about it, particularly when I'm doing my job up here, but it does help move things along. So we have a motion on the floor. I see Ms. Shanahan, your hand is up.
Sorry, I wanted to speak to it as well.
Okay, pardon me, Ms. Shanahan. I'm going to go back to Mr. Genuis. Ms. Shanahan, I'll come to you in a moment, Ms. Shanahan. Mr. Genuis is correct. He did not relinquish the floor. Mr. Genuis, the
Point
floor
of
is
order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Khalid.
I believe Ms. Shanahan's hand was up. The motion is still being distributed to members, and I would appreciate hearing from Ms. Shanahan before we...
As would I, and as I corrected myself, Mr. Genuis was clear. He was not relinquishing the floor. He just was signaling to make sure members had the motion so they could review it as he was talking to it. So, Ms. Genuis, you have the floor, after which I will happily go to Ms. Shanahan. Over to you, Mr. Genuis.
Thank you, Chair. The motion that I have moved deals with the situation that we have recently heard about in the Arrive scam scandal, which is that one of the contractors was given $7.9 million as part of the Arrive Can process, and for what work we still don't have clarity on. But the Arrive scam scandal led to this contractor, Dalian, receiving $7.9 million at the same time as this person was an employee of the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Department of Veterans Affairs, by the way, also gave money to this company. So you have an employee of the government whose own department, as well as other departments, is giving money to his contract. Now this is absurd. As I said earlier, the reason we see any contracting out is based on the idea that the government doesn't have the internal expertise to perform a particular task. So why would the government, contracting out on the basis that they don't have the internal expertise to do something, contract out to someone who is also a government employee? It makes no sense. It allows individuals to double dip. This shouldn't happen. I had asked our witness today directly, are there rules that clearly prohibit this practice? He answered to the committee that there are not rules that clearly prohibit this practice, that there could be an evaluation around a conflict of interest, but that, in his words, it is not disallowed. I think it should be disallowed that you have somebody making money both as a government employee and as an external contractor when they're being externally contracted on the basis of the alleged lack of internal expertise of government. So I would hope that this motion would have the agreement of the committee, and I think it's important in light of the evidence we've heard to send a clear message to the government that this policy, that this type of practice should no longer be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Genuis. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Chair. And again, we see a colleague, member of this committee, pulling a stunt, whether it's at the top of the meeting or at the end of a meeting, in such a way where we're already meeting 3 times this week. We've met numerous times before, and I'm sure we will continue meeting again. The question was posed to the witness regarding practices in the ethics